Today, the modern dinner table is defined by abundance and choice. We live with a luxury of disposing of leftovers, without a second thought. But less than a century ago, the act of eating was a matter of raw endurance. During the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, and the shortages of the Second World War, the systems that provided food security for millions of Americans effectively vanished. In many households, the kitchen stopped being a place for traditional recipes. Cooking was no longer an art or a craft. It became a calculated survival strategy. The meals that emerged from this period left such a mark on those who ate them that many survivors repressed the memories of these recipes for decades. What follows are the specific strategies families used when the cupboard was empty, the meals that allowed them to continue when the standard rules of nutrition no longer applied. When traditional ingredients were gone, the immediate goal was to silence the physical pain of hunger by convincing the stomach it was full. One common solution was the potato peel pancake, which utilized the dirty outer layers typically destined for the trash. Families saved every ounce of scrap they could find. They mixed these peels with floor dust, water, and whatever leftover grease was available to create a thin, fried cake. To a starving person, the smell of frying grease made these scraps feel like a luxury. Persistent hunger shifts how the brain evaluates resources, turning what was once waste into a vital asset. As meat supplies disappeared, the search for calories became a matter of extraction. Households would boil the same discarded animal bones repeatedly, trying to pull every microscopic drop of fat into a thin broth. When the pantry was completely empty, families turned to the land around them. They gathered weeds from the roadsides to make dandelion soup. When boiled with salt and onion scraps, the resulting liquid was harsh and earthy. Children often struggled to swallow the bitter broth, but parents insisted on every drop, knowing there was no guarantee of a meal the following day. These strategies prioritized calories over custom. Taste was secondary to the raw biological fuel needed to survive until the next morning. Beyond the physical toll, families faced the psychological burden of trying to maintain a sense of social normalcy while their resources evaporated. Many relied on the lard sandwich, plain pork fat spread on bread. It was a cheap, efficient way to deliver energy to a worker or a student. Children carried these sandwiches to school wrapped in cloth, often trying to make the meal appear as a standard lunch to avoid the stigma of their situation. Another common illusion was ketchup soup, created by stirring free ketchup packets into boiling water. The resulting red broth looked like tomato soup, allowing a household to simulate a familiar meal for an entire week, using almost nothing. These simulations offered little in the way of nutrition, but they helped preserve a sense of dignity. By mimicking a normal meal, families could temporarily shield themselves from the full psychological weight of their poverty. Within the home, parents used deception to shield their children from the reality of how little food was actually left. When the only food available was stale, rock-hard bread, families poured boiling water over it just to make it soft enough to chew. Mothers would often give the largest pieces to their children and sit with empty hands, claiming they had already eaten elsewhere. The experience of presenting a bowl of hot water and bread as a full dinner stayed with these parents for the rest of their lives. When supplies reached zero, some households turned to extreme fillers to stretch their remaining stock. In some cases, literal sawdust or powdered tree bark was mixed into flour to make a single loaf of bread last twice as long. The resulting bread was dry and difficult to swallow, but it served the math of survival. These efforts show how starvation pushes aside conventional eating, replacing it with the daily task of keeping a child alive for one more night. Even at the height of the crisis, families tried to preserve a sense of spirit, leading to the creation of the water pie. It contained no fruit and no filling, just water, sugar, flour, and a small amount of butter baked together. This was a psychological tool, a way for a parent to give their children a moment of happiness when there was little else to offer. While these desperation meals may sound repulsive to us today, they were the tools of survival for an entire generation. These recipes are the record of families who continued to find a path forward after the traditional structures of society had failed them. The taste was often bitter, and the sacrifices were heavy, but for the people of that era, these methods were enough to see them through. For millions of Americans, these culinary illusions weren't just history, they were exactly how they kept their families alive.